I just felt like God nudging on me saying, you need to let her go. And so in that moment, I told her, I said, Alex, I want you to be pain-free. I'm giving you permission. You can go. It's okay. And she lifted up her head and she opened up her eyes and she had this big, big smile, beautiful smile on her face. And she gasped.
Welcome to When You Look, where ordinary people share their extraordinary experiences, and you get to decide, was it coincidence or God?
Jody, thanks so much for being on When You Look. Really delighted to have you on the show.
I am super jazzed to be on the show and to be talking to your listeners about my story.
Yeah, well, we're delighted to have you and really interested in hearing exactly that, your story. But before we get there, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am a speaker, author, advocate. I worked in the nonprofit field for about 18 years, and I thoroughly enjoyed that, which has kind of led me to what I do now with Alex's foundation. I started a nonprofit foundation, the Alex Hudson Lyme Foundation. So I work on advocating for Lyme patients, creating awareness. And then also in my spare time, I talk about my book that came out in 2022 and really has taken off on angel wings and has become a bestseller and won best memoir with the Christian Indie Book Award. So just amazed at what God has done in my life and is continuing to do in my life. And now I'm being a guest on podcast shows. So you just never know.
Yeah, indeed. And we're really excited to hear about what God is doing in your life, particularly because there's a lot of tragedy, not only for you, prior to Alex, but with and through Alex. But before we get to that, you mentioned your book. It's called My Promise to Alex, because you didn't actually mention the title. We'll make sure that we link to that in the show description. But let's start to get into your story, Jody. Tell us a little bit about where things start, how they progress, and how it all unfolds.
My gosh. So my story's within a story. So I'm literally going to take it back to when I was born, because I was born to a single mother who couldn't care for me. So she placed me in foster care. I was eventually adopted. But the unfortunate thing about that was I was brought into a family where both parents were battling from alcoholism. So I tell people I spent most of my childhood trying to forget about my childhood. And then fast forward to 2011, where after 20 years of marriage, I became divorced, bankrupt. And also during that same period of time, that is when I was trying to help my daughter, Alex, figure out what was going on with her medical mystery, where she had been battling this for about 10 years. Eventually, we got the right diagnosis in 2017, but unfortunately, we just couldn't get a leg up on it. And then we lost her March 24th of 2018 at 22 years old. So God definitely, has been with me through this journey. It has not been all great, obviously, but what I want people to really take away from our conversation today is that no matter what goes on in your life, I think it's so important to continue to remember your why and how you are showing up every day. And I say that because I don't want to be defined by what I just told you from my whole upbringing and what happened with Alex. It could have been very easy for me just to be this grief girl and to sit in that darkness. But, for us to truly shine our light to others and really for others to see what God is doing in our life, we still have to show up on those days and those moments where it's really hard. Because as we know, it's really easy for people to see God shining through you when things are going great, when you get a promotion, when you have a, new baby, when you're going on vacation, you have all these wonderful things happening. But how do you show up in those real dark moments, those really hard struggles? And that's really what I wanted people to see, that through everything that I've gone through, and especially losing Alex in 2018, that was not going to define me. I really wanted people to still see the goodness and the light that God was sharing through me and through my experiences and through my walk.
Yeah. Well, Jody, let's just pause and acknowledge the loss of Alex. I am really sorry for the loss of your daughter.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And when people say that to me, I acknowledge it and I, honor that. And then I also remind myself, but Jody, on the flip side, how lucky you were to have her for 22 years, because so many people, that might be listening to this story have never had that opportunity to have a child or to have that mother-daughter relationship. And so even though mine was cut short here on earth, guess what? I'm going to see her again, and it's going to go on forever and ever. And even, and I write this in the book, even her death was such a beautiful testimony to her faith and our faith and our relationship. And she really left me with a parting gift, which really I think allowed me to be able to continue to move forward. And we can talk about that later. But, it definitely is just God showing up in those moments and using whoever, whatever he can in those moments just to say, I've got you, girl.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Jody, I want to come back to the point that you were making moments ago about not being defined essentially by your past. I'm using that past term very broadly, right?
Right.
Um, you were certainly talking more specifically about grief and things like that, but then how important it was for you to be showing up even in the tough times.
Right.
Um, what was it though that got you to that decision ultimately? That it was more important to be showing up, right, and bringing God's light and life into the world, as opposed to being defined by the past.
I think that defining moment for me was that parting gift that Alex left for me. When she passed away that day, I didn't know that she was going to be passing that day, and some of my girlfriends had come over, and we were just surrounding her bed and just sharing different beautiful stories and memories. And when it came my turn to say something to Alex, like I just felt like God nudging on me saying, you need to let her go. Like she's not going to go if she feels that you are still hanging on to her. And so in that moment, I told her, I said, Alex, I go, I want you to be pain free. I want you to be able to play with your dog again, Buddy, who was up in heaven. I was painting this really beautiful scene for her. And I said, I'm giving you permission. You can go. It's okay. I'm going to be okay. And in that moment, her head had been laying on the pillow, and she lifted up her head and she opened up her eyes, and she had this big, big smile, beautiful smile on her face. And she gasped, and then she fell back on her pillow and she passed. And in that moment, as I was giving her permission to leave, she was showing me that where she was going and she was going to be okay, and that my life was not done and over. There was still so much more that God wanted me to do. So it was basically her transferring that baton to me and for me to really carry on everything that she originally wanted to do, which was start a nonprofit to help Lyme patients, write a story, write a book about her faith testimony and her walk with Lyme disease. So I think that really helped to propel me to feel like, okay, look at everything that Alex has just done, especially in these last couple of months, where she never took any pain medication. She always wanted to be so present with God and with her journey. And I thought, how can I sit here in bed and wallow in my grief? Alex never did, right? She showed me how to move forward. And it just resonated so strongly with me that I couldn't do that. I could not sit back and just sit in my grief. I had to do something with it. And so that's why in the book it says my promise to Alex, through pain, comes purpose. And I found my purpose. And, I had a son. I have a son who's 2 years older than Alex. And so it was up to me to use this moment to show him, how do we survive those knocked down, gut wrenching, horrific experiences in life? Like, I had to show him how mom was going to be able to do that so he could do that himself. And also, it was my whole relationship with God. Like, if I truly am a child of God and if I'm truly leaning into this relationship, like, I need to attach this to God and use God to help propel me as well, and have those conversations with him, and, those come to Jesus talk, so to speak, where it's like, God, I'm so pissed off right now. Like, how could you do this to me? And then work it out and then get on the same page and just go. So it was a whole process. It didn't happen overnight, but I definitely think, I'm very project based, and I think it really helped setting up her foundation, putting all of that pain and rawness into something that was meaningful. And then God nudged on me to write this book. I'm a businesswoman. I write grants. I write business reports. I don't sit down and journal. I don't sit. So this was so out of my comfort zone. But
Mm.
that's how God uses you, and that's how God stretches your faith when you tiptoe into the waters, test it a little bit, and it's okay to retreat, but keep tiptoeing and keep going further and further, because I promise you, in my case, there is something beautiful at the end of that, which was this book that has just taken off and has reached so many people. And it honors Alex's story, and it also helps to create this legacy. And when it's written into, print, her story is going to be there forever. And that just means so much to me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. There are a couple things that you said there that I really appreciated. One, the duration and the durability, if you will, of the story, Alex's story, because you put it in the print. I think that's really, really wonderful. But you also talked about these, what I'm going to describe as these very raw moments with God. Tell us a little bit more about those, because the specific reason that I'm asking is that you talked about praying and sharing your heart with God about, like, God, I'm pissed about this, and I have had a similar experience where the more that I dump my heart out in the fullest and rawest sense, the more God meets me.
Yes.
And I think that there are some folks that were listening that are perhaps a little scared or hesitant to dump it all out, even when it's really messy and may even include some 4-letter words. So tell us your experience.
Yes. So there's one experience that really got me the most, and I write about it in the book. It was in December, and again, Alex passed the next year in March. So this was in December, and I was just really having a hard time with my relationship with God, with Alex. We had spent, this past year in 2017, over $100,000 just trying to get Alex better, going to the best facilities, the best doctors. And mind you, I didn't have this money. I mean, I was selling her car. I was like trying to do everything to come up with money to help support this, because a lot of times insurance does not cover Lyme treatment or medical facilities in states. So anyway, I was just really having a hard season, obviously. And Alex was in the back master bedroom. She had moved in back there. And I told her that I was going to head out, just go to the grocery store really quick, and I was going to be back, because I just knew, like, I just needed a moment. And I don't want Alex to see this, because I had to always be strong and put on, the strong face for her. So I took off in my car and I started driving, and I just pulled over into some neighborhood, and I just started banging on the dashboard. And basically, I just was letting it all out and, really giving it to God. And then I did one more thing. I gave God an ultimatum, right? Like I was going to, play God myself. And I'm like, listen, here's the deal. Like you either fix Alex right now or you take her because this purgatory is not working out for me. And how dare you think that, blah, blah, blah. And just pounding, crying. And then I got all my senses together and I said, okay, now I can go home. I'll finish cleaning. Whenever I was stressed, I'd clean. My house was immaculate, but I'm still cleaning. And so I go back and I checked in with Alex and told her that I was back and I was dusting in the living room. And I looked out the window and we had a courtyard with a beautiful fountain in the courtyard. And I saw a bluebird on there. And I'm like, wow, that's weird. I've never seen a bluebird before. So I go back into the bedroom and I said to Alex, hey, Alex, I go, have you seen this bluebird before? I've never seen it. And, she was sick, but she still had that 22-year-old attitude, like, yeah. She goes, yes, Mom. She goes, I see it every day at 3 o'clock. And she said, and at 3 o'clock, she goes, when I see that bluebird, there's two things that I think of. Number one is that God has given me another day here on earth. And number two, he hasn't forgotten about me. And I just was like so taken back by that. The symbolism of the 3 o'clock p.m., symbolism of the bird, what it represented to Alex, and how many afternoons it was showing up. And I never saw it, never paid attention to it. So I went back out to the living room and I just sat down and started crying and really just saying, God, forgive me. Like, I'm so sorry that just, a half hour ago, I'm screaming, yelling at you. Where are you in all of this? I'm giving you an ultimatum. And yet every day you're showing up so beautifully for my daughter and you are there with us. So I think it's so important for your listeners to really pay attention to what's going on around them. Because so many times when, it's like they say you're, going into the forest and you can't see the, whatever that expression is, you're just like so into the thick of all of it. And that happens when we're in those dark moments, those dark places. Sometimes we can't see God's beauty around all the ugliness. And, to this day, I have to tell you, I still see bluebirds all the time. That was our little pact when Alex, I knew, was going to be leaving us. I said, I need to have a sign. Like, I need to know how I can still communicate and talk to you and know that you're there, just like how God always showed up for you. And again, she's like, duh. She goes, the bluebird.
Yeah, Mom.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, gosh, I have to tell you again.
Oh, man. Jody, thank you for being transparent about that.
Yeah.
That's real. That matters. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Man, that's great. Well, let's talk about something that's not so great, because I think a lot of people have heard of Lyme's disease and yet have very little understanding of how it manifests and those types of things. So you have lots of experience with this. Give us a sense for essentially Alex's arc and what we should know.
So, I mean, it would take hours to go into everything, with Lyme disease. And that's why we have a website. People that are curious or people that might know of somebody that has disease, or maybe as I talk a little bit about the symptoms, they might be like, oh my gosh, yes, my friend has been suffering from all this and doctors can't figure out what's going on. Maybe she should be tested for Lyme disease. So I encourage people to go onto that website. We have great resources. There's a national organization called LymeDisease.org that actually, if you put in your zip code, they can help you find a Lyme literate doctor. But it's such a complicated disease. But basically, it is a bacterial infection from a tick bite. And 35% of those individuals that get bit by a tick will develop what's called a bullseye rash. And it's right at the point of origin where the tick bite is. But the majority of people don't. And so you might not even know that you have been bitten by a tick or that you have Lyme disease until you start feeling symptoms, joint pain, inflammation, flu-like. You just kind of feel off. Well, boy, what I just described right now could fit into a lot of different autoimmune categories, right? So how do you know it's
Yeah.
Lyme disease? Well, that's when you really have to do proper testing. Unfortunately, a lot of doctors still use the old Western blot testing, which will give you false negatives and it's not accurate. So there are, really good places that give proper testing that also I talk about on the website. But, it's basically starting with the joint pain, the inflammation. In Alex's case, she had all of that and more. It because it's a bacterial infection, it can impact every organ in your body. So Alex was 5'6". She weighed 120 pounds. When she passed, she weighed 57 pounds. Think about that. That's like half of her body size, right? Because she couldn't process her foods. It impacted her digestive system, her gut. She was basically allergic to most foods. There's only like 4 or 5 safe foods that she could eat. So it really has a host of different symptoms that individuals can develop. And if that wasn't complicated enough, the treatment is even more complicated. Um, you know, if you know that you've been bitten by a tick and you go on a round of antibiotics, it's usually, it will usually clear out the infection. But in Alex's case, because she went 10 years misdiagnosed, it was too late. So even the antibiotics, I mean, it couldn't reverse what had been done to her body. And so there were different alternative treatments that we tried to use to rectify that. But again, it was just, it had just gotten away from us. Most people are very familiar, obviously, with COVID, right? So I think Lyme disease and all these other autoimmune illnesses have really benefited from COVID and post COVID, like these long haul symptoms that they talk about. So doctors
Yeah.
are understanding how they can use maybe, what they're doing with post COVID victims with Lyme disease and other autoimmune chronic illnesses. So it's very encouraging seeing a lot of this discussion. Even this past month at the White House, you've got, Robert Kennedy, he brought in a whole Lyme disease panel, to look at Lyme disease and these other autoimmune illnesses. So it's great that conversations are still happening. We still need, more money to fuel for research, but I've been very encouraged by what I've been seeing. So that's really great.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. Oh man. There's truly so much there, and I'm really blown away by the 57 pounds. Um, I mean that really just gives us a picture
Yep.
of the devastation that it was doing to Alex from the inside out.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And you had to watch all that. I mean, I'm
Yes.
sure that was tremendously challenging.
The hardest thing as a parent um, is when you can't fix things for your children, right? I mean, when they're little, you fix their scraped knees. When they get older and have their first love or crush, you fix their broken hearts. How do you fix a medical illness that the doctors don't even know how to fix and to help? And where there's not even a clear treatment path. It's basically being given a buffet and saying, would you like buffet number 1, 2, 3, or these other 25, treatments. So yeah, it's very, very complicated.
Well, I appreciate you laying that out for us, though. At least you scratched the surface, and I think that's more than a lot of us even have in terms of awareness about Lyme and all the issues that can flow from it if it's not treated.
May is Lyme Disease Awareness Month. So people that are listening, there's usually, lots of um, good messages on TV, radio. I've been seeing a lot more national messaging. So, like I said, that's very encouraging as well.
Yeah. Good. Good to know about May. I did not know that.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I want to land things here with the two questions that we asked all of our guests. And I want to highlight in this first question a couple of different pieces. So, on the day that Alex passes, you feel this nudge from the Holy Spirit, as you kind of described, let her go. And you guys had prior conversations about bluebirds. And in your really raw moments with God, and basically asking him to show up, a bluebird shows up. First time that you'd seen it, right? So when we look at those and many other things in the story that you have shared, were those things coincidence, Jody, or God?
Totally God. Totally God. I mean, even writing the book, like I said, I'm, not an author by any means. And for me to be able to sit down and knock that out within 4 months' time, that was all divine intervention. And seeing the bluebirds and just having him giving Alex those visual signs every day at 3 p.m. That's not a coincidence at all.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
Um, well, you've alluded to some of this, right, with the book and more, but how has your life changed as a result of everything that we've been talking about?
I never thought I would be an individual that would write a book, that would be speaking on platforms. Um, I I'm very comfortable doing media from my nonprofit work, but that was always about other people, like raising money for our clients who are, struggling to, make ends meet, struggling to put food on the table for their families. It was so easy for me to speak and address that because it wasn't personal. This is personal. But again, walking and being nudged by how God wants me to show up in my faith walk. This is what He laid out for me to do. And I, am so honored that I'm allowed to be on platforms such as yours to really, talk about that faith walk. I'm just an average person that just happened to have a very extraordinary um, life that has been defined by so many God moments. And I would do God an injustice if I didn't talk about that and share those stories and give people hope. Again, not being defined as a grief girl, but really being defined as, this warrior of God that no matter how many times I get struck down, together, he and I are going to keep rising. And that's what I want people just to remember. Just keep rising, right? It does get better.
Yeah, praise God, particularly as you defined it with in concert with him. The
Yes.
two of you is how you
Yes.
phrase that.
Yes.
And that makes all the difference.
Oh, you can't.
Yeah.
I don't know how I say this all the time. I don't know how people can get through the day without him. I start my day with him. I put on the armor of God and I'm like, all right, let's, knock this out. What can we accomplish together? End of the day, do a checklist. How did I show up for him? How did I show up for me? How did I show up for others? We have those opportunities all the time, even standing in a grocery line, instead of being impatient with maybe a little old lady in front of you that still likes to write the check instead of doing a
Yep.
debit card. Like, how do you have those moments that you can show up for maybe the person behind you and engage in a conversation? So, yeah,
Wow. A checklist. How did I show up for him?
yep,
And that's neat.
yep.
That is really neat. Well, Jody, how do people get the book? How do they stay more in touch with you and the work that you're doing, talking more about Lyme disease?
Yes. So if they go to my website, it's www.alexhudsonlimefoundation.org, all one word. All my contact information is on there, email, cell phone. I do answer emails. I do answer calls. Um, so that's how they can get a hold of me. Also on the website is a direct link to Amazon where they can purchase the book. And I'd be happy to, hear from people once they've read the book, what their thoughts are on it.
Awesome. We will make sure we link to all of that stuff as well.
Great.
Jody Hudson, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for glorifying God, and for coming on When You Look.
Thank you so much. Really appreciated the conversation.
Was it coincidence or God? You decide for yourself, but I believe you just heard a story for His glory. When You Look is powered by stories just like this, and yours could be next. Go to whenyoulook.com/be a guest or use the link in the description below. Be sure to drop us a like, drop a comment, or share this episode with somebody that needs it. And until next time, thanks a bunch for listening, and God bless.